Today we're going to be revisiting the performance in Prey, but we're going to be testing it on AMD Ryzen with the 1700 CPU overclocked to 4 GHz. If you missed the video earlier today, I did performance testing where I included the RX 480 versus the GTX 1060, and in that video I was using the i7 6800K, and it showed a pretty commanding lead for the GTX 1060, getting better performance than the RX 480. But as I even mentioned in that video, and more people came out in the comments saying, this game is optimized for Ryzen and Radeon, although it ended up running better on the 1060, it still looked like it was running better on Nvidia cards. But there still was that Ryzen question since they put it on the splash screen, so I wanted to go back and see if this game actually runs better on the Ryzen 1700. So I put that at 4 GHz up against my i7 6800K at 4.3 GHz, and I kept all the settings on the GPUs the same. So for the AMD card, it was running on the latest driver of 17.5.1. I had that overclocked to 1400 MHz on the core and 2150 MHz on the memory, while the GTX 1060 was also running on its latest driver, 382.05, and that had an additional 200 MHz on the core and 300 MHz on the memory. So we're going to start things off at 1080p with the RX 480, and you'll see the 1700 versus the 6800K here, and you'll see that we actually got a really big bump in performance just by switching over to the Ryzen processor. Even though this game doesn't really stress the CPU all that much, it seems to be much better optimized for Ryzen, getting an average of 124 FPS and a minimum of 87, while on the i7 6800K, we got an average of 110 and a minimum of 81. Those are the same numbers that I used earlier in that review. I just reran these tests on the Ryzen processor. Moving over to the GTX 1060 now, we again saw a very large bump in performance just by switching CPUs here, going from 131 average up to 150, and the minimum there was 107, while previously on the 6800K, we got a minimum of 96. So both of these cards, the GTX 1060 and the RX 480s, got huge bumps in performance just by using the Ryzen CPU. The RX 480 got a bump of 14 FPS in the averages at 1080p, while the GTX 1060 got a bump of 19 FPS. So the 1060 actually got more performance than the RX 480, but at the end of the day, both of these GPUs benefited from being paired with a Ryzen processor. Very interesting. It looks like AMD has done a good job of optimizing this game for Ryzen. I just hope that maybe we'll get some better drivers for the GPU in the near future that will leverage that as well. Moving over to 1440p now with the GTX 1060, we can see we got an average of 92 FPS and a minimum of 68 on the Ryzen 1700, while on the 6800K, we got an average of 81 and a minimum of 62. So the story continues there, where we're seeing massive gains just by using the Ryzen 1700 at 4 GHz against the 6800K, which is clocked faster at 4.3 GHz. And then on the RX 480, that story is exactly the same here, where we got an average of 76 and a minimum of 59, whereas on the 6800K, it struggled a lot, where it still got the average over 60 at 65. The minimums were very low, down at 48. So we saw a bump of 11 FPS there on the minimums, which is, enough to really keep this game running very, very smooth, even at 1440p on the RX 480. So I think this testing is pretty conclusive to show that this, title that's got the Ryzen Radeon splash screen and everything is certainly running better on Ryzen CPUs. But when it comes to the graphics side of things, the RX 480 is falling behind the GTX 1060. Now, I know a lot of people would love to see me test the RX 580, which, usually only has a few percent increase in performance, which I don't think would be enough to close the gap here. And unfortunately, I don't own an RX 580. I'll try reaching out to AMD again and see if we can possibly get a 580 in for sampling so that we can utilize that in testing and further, GPU reviews and comparisons like this on new games that come out. If you guys would like to see me change the 480 out for the 580, if that's something enough of you really need to see, for all of these comparisons, then I guess it's something we'll have to look at doing, whether AMD provides the card or not. I may just end up having to go out and buy one, but let me know your thoughts on these numbers down in the comments below. I think it's going to raise a lot of interesting discussion. And in case you missed out on the earlier video, know, if you do want to pick this game up, you can get it over on CD Keys using my affiliate link, which I'll leave down in the description below. It's only $38 over on there versus $60 on Steam. Obviously, with Steam, you have the advantage of being able to get a refund, but if you know you're going to like this game, which is very much like a Half-Life kind of, which is awesome. I mean, it's like Half-Life with a wrench instead of a crowbar. I'm loving this game so far, so if you want to pick it up and save a few bucks and support the channel, please use that CD Keys link down in the description below. But until the next video, I will catch you guys next time. It's all right.